Kia ora, good morning. I've been up for a little while. No, that was me. I accidentally pressed the wrong button. I've been up for a little while. I had a message to pass on to Donald Trump and his little magogs on behalf of God. Um, I've passed the message on to him. So just keep watching the news because things are about to get very interesting, I think, in quite a hilarious way for Donald Trump and his little NATO buddies. Everything I said yesterday in that Russia video, everything came true within a couple of hours. The dream was actually God telling me that all I was like just sitting in nothingness, in dark nothingness, watching a light at the far end of the dark nothingness, and God was talking. In this dream, God was talking, and he had a message for Donald Trump, which I've passed on. You can go to exit or, whatever, it's all there. It's not my business anymore. It's not my fight anymore. But, yeah, he had a message for Donald Trump, so I passed it on. He also wanted Trump to know that he's who's behind the activity on my phone. And that that's no coincidence that he used his friend Jeff Bezos's Amazon as the smoke and mirror to try and threaten me. So God's on it. So God's taking care of it. So I don't need to worry about that. That's not what this is about. For years I've been trying to find a name for my radio station. I came up with all sorts. I was going to name it after my sister. I was going to name it after, like, all the names that I thought I wanted to name it had been taken. North Star Radio, Dragon Radio, blah, 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 Draconian Radio, all of it. All been taken. And then it hit me this morning, but in my dream. Because God said he wanted me to announce it on FAEA Radio, which he was jokingly referring to my social media like YouTube and X. I'm keeping Instagram out of it now because I want to keep my Instagram for the promotion of my foundation and to encourage and inspire high funks with it. So I keep all that stuff out of my Instagram. And I'm trying to keep it out of YouTube and X as well because I don't want to be dealing with this stuff anymore. But in the conversation that I had with God, he mentioned FAEA Radio, the fire station. He said he needed me to use my fire to put out the fire at the fire station. And I'm like, what's he talking about? Once I figured it out and I saw what was going on X, I knew what it meant. But I thought, he's given me the name for my radio station, FAEA Radio. So we'll call it the fire station. So when we have radio competitions, fire at the station, the fire station. But yeah, we're going to call it FAEA Radio, apparently, according to God. But you know that I've talked at length about some of the shows that we're going to be doing. So I'm just having my coffee. My nephew is going to be doing a radio show that is for men and young boys who, my nephew has survived a lot. Like me, he's going through his ascension process. Him and his wife are going through an ascension together because like attracts like. So when you go through an ascension, I say a lot of people, but people around you get sucked into the slipstream. And if you're of the same ilk, if you're of the same vibration, they ascend with you. But with you going first, they look at you as the leader. So I often give them advice, both, as a couple with kids. And they're an incredible couple too. The love and respect they have for each other is phenomenal. They really are like the model of what it is to be a genuine couple who love each other, who have respect for each other, who overcome all adversities and that together because of the love and respect they have for each other, even when, like, it's been down to the wire, they still stick together. And if they continue the way they are, these are the sort of couples that'll stay married for like 80, 90 years. So they come to me for advice as individuals and as a couple. And with Portia being Māori as well, she often comes to me for advice, from a medicine woman, high priestess, shamanic perspective as well, when dealing with, certain protocols with the way we've been raised, in our iwi and with our whānau and all that sort of thing. So Nefi's going to be doing his own show where he will be talking from a male perspective of the ascension and, offering advice to young boys and men who are dealing with the same things that he's had to deal with. And he's dealt with a lot. For someone who's only like 42. And then obviously, I don't know now, but my son Thomas, I don't know, I might have to get somebody else, but, talking about video games and video game history and all that sort of thing. And then I'm going to do my, remember the radio show I had in Chicago? It was called the Paranormal Hour, but I want it to be like a talkback radio where people can come to me and talk about their paranormal, supernatural experiences, if they're scared, if they need answers, if they need help, like that sort of thing. I just don't have a name for it yet, but that will be one that I do probably more than likely in my own home, depending on my pain levels, which is why I need a recording studio. The guys will have to come down to my house if I'm in too much pain to go down to the station. So I haven't got a name for that one yet. I also want to do one, obviously, like my connecting the dots, with unsolved mysteries and, how I've got them on my channel, where I talk about like the Black Dahlia murders and the gnomes that have been seen around England and that sort of thing. So I'll have that radio show, which is also going to be a TV show. And then I want to do one that is that talks about paying off karmic and ancestral debts, like getting people to call in and write in and then discussing, like karmic debt and ancestral debt and, the experiences of, the ascension process and why we have to go through so much suffering and torment in that in order to heal. And a lot of it is to do with karmic debt and ancestral debt as well. So having a show about that. But one thing that I've talked about before, even other than my old radio show in Chicago, one of the programs that I want to have that I've talked about for many years is the Stoic Hour, where we talk about Stoic philosophy. All I've ever wanted is to have friends that I could discuss philosophy with, Stoic philosophy. I'm going to have a cafe at FAEA called Philosopher's Corner, where, all the writers and artists and musicians and that, like the high funks who don't necessarily want to be by themselves but don't necessarily want to be around people, they can come and have exquisite coffees, and if it's in a country where it's legal, like weed brownies, but if not, like beautiful muffins and brownies. And my brownie recipe is famous. And I'd love to do a weed version, but if not, just a normal version, but where they can come and have like exquisite coffees and beautiful teas and, after 7 o'clock, bring out the cognacs and brandies and sherries and that sort of thing, where they can sit and listen to some quiet, like classical music or a solo guitarist where they can work on their laptop and write their novels, sit with their canvas and paint, like that sort of thing, but done like a gentleman's club, but obviously women as well. but where civil minds come for civil behaviour and civil discussion. And, you know, discussing philosophy and the philosophers and all of that, because that's what I want. Because I want to be able to sit and have friends that I can talk about Stoicism with. Stoicism changed my life. It's one of the very few things that where good came out of being with my ex-husband. When I was going through my ascension and everybody from my life started dropping like flies, and I couldn't understand what was going on and why it was happening. I just knew there was a greater purpose. He introduced me to Stoicism, and I fell in love with it immediately because it was like, it blew my mind wide open because it was explaining me to myself, coming from the mouths of like ancient Greek philosophers. And I couldn't understand how these philosophers knew me and my mind and my process so well that it gave me the courage to stand up and fight for everything I believed in and for who I was. And that's the whole point of Stoicism. You know, it means strength. Stoic philosophy gives you the strength to carry on. It gives you the strength to fight because they give you the answers to the reasons as to why you're fighting in the first place. And it's all for the best possible reasons. And even though it was a philosophy designed for men, and especially like, you know, men on the battlefield and that, for me as a strong woman, it just spoke to me on every level. And I have his Marcus Aurelius's book of meditations, and I want to be able to sit with it on my radio station and just every day go through a passage and then talk about it and talk about my perspective on what I think he means. And then, you know, bring in other philosophers like Socrates and Plato and Epictetus and, you know, talk to people about the deeper meaning of why we're here and how we can't take this world for granted, how we can't take our lives for granted. He says things that are just so to the point and clear cut and honest and like, God, I didn't see it like that before, or that makes so much sense, or I knew it. I knew that how I felt wasn't weird, or, you know, what people need to understand, well, what high funks need to understand, if you're a high functioning creative empath, you come from a long line in your genetic strand that remembers the ancient ways. If you're still painting with a paintbrush and a pencil and a canvas, if you're still doing your arts and gifts and your talents the traditional way, where you're not using AI, okay, if you're using like software and that, you know, you're from the generation where Photoshop and that was a miracle for doing graphic art. But if you can still pick up a pencil and draw and, you know, you're still sitting clacking away at the keyboard instead of talking stuff into an AI that types everything out for you, if you're doing stuff the traditional way, if your arts and your skills and your methods are done the old school traditional way, you're from a long line that remembers the ancient ways. I still to this day write stuff down on pen and paper. I've got notebooks and scraps of paper all over the place where I've written things down. I hate watching YouTube videos for tutorials. I prefer to read. You know, look it up and read. If I could, I'd go to the library, but times are changing so fast, libraries would just expand to a point of no return. But I'd dearly love to be able to go to the library and get a few books out and just sit and read. I don't even know where there is a library here in Wakefield. We need to bring libraries back. That's one of the things that I'm doing. I'm bringing record stores back. I'm bringing libraries back, bookstores, and I'm bringing all that back, where you'll be able to sit in my philosopher's corner and just pull out a book that we published, or because I've got a deal that if you're like a passing musician or artist or writer, and you're just passing through, like you're a traveller, you might be backpacking or, backpacking around Europe or whatever, and you come to us and you need a meal, we'll give you like a place to stay. We'll let you pitch a tent. We'll give you a place to stay. We'll give you a hot meal. You can come and have a shower with us on the condition that if you're a musician, you perform at Philosopher's Corner for a couple of nights to pay for it. Or if you're a writer and you've got some books, you've produced a book or whatever, you give us a copy of your book to put on a shelf. If you're an artist, you do us a piece of art to put on our wall in exchange for, room and board, for a couple of nights. And I actually got the idea from a place in Paris. There was a place in Paris where you could stay for the night as long as you left a book. So, yeah, I take inspiration from the world around me. And with Stoic philosophy, it probably without Stoicism, between Stoicism and Carl Jung, to a lesser degree, obviously Jordan Peterson and Friedrich Nietzsche, they absolutely saved me from my ascension, because had they have not have been brought into my life when they did, I probably would have thought I was going mad and not realising that I was being demagnetized from a very toxic, dangerous life where I was around very toxic, dangerous people, where I had toxic mindsets and I was still holding on to toxic behavior from my childhood, and that needed to be released, because God was not going to let me be a leader for children and for the broken hearts and minds of the high funk world without me being worthy of being a leader. And I always say that if you want to be a leader, if you consider yourself to be a leader, you have to be a leader worthy of the follow. You can think you're all that, but you have to be someone that your followers want to follow. See, the difference between me and Donald Trump, right? He threatens people, and Keir Starmer as well. They're two quote unquote leaders, I use that term very loosely, who threaten people. If you don't do this, I'm going to do this. And so that's a dictator. The dictators aren't leaders. They tell you how it's going to be, and you use threats of force and violence if you don't follow their rules. But a leader is somebody who says, this is who I am, these are my principles, I live by my principles, I do what I say what I do, and then everybody else goes, you know what, that person's right, I'm going to follow them. And then if they say, we have to go to war, well, which is what I am saying, we're fighting a holy war because there's some very dark, twisted people out there, but the only way we're going to be able to do this is if we all stand together in our truth and put our differences of skin colour and religion and that aside and link arms, because we're stronger together than we are apart, and we demand change. And if we don't get that change, we make that change ourselves. That's the difference between a dictator and a leader. Because a leader is someone worthy of the follow. They've proven themselves to be the sort of character where everybody else watching them goes, I want to be a part of that too, because I believe in everything they stand for. Where there's no forces of threat or violence, or leaders always start their path on their own. They're trailblazers. Socrates is a prime example of that. They hated him. He's considered the smartest man in human history. And instead of backing down and admitting that he was wrong about anything. He chose to drink the poison because he stood in his principles, and I'm exactly the same. I chose to drink the poison. That's why I've got it on video. When I was being forced to swallow those pills, I'm doing this for America, I'm doing this for my boys, I'm doing it for the children. I chose to swallow the poison. And then I'd raise my fist in the air as I was walking out, knowing that anaphylaxis was about to kick in within about 2 or 3 minutes. I'd say a mil per pill. I'm going to sue you for £1,000,000 for every pill you force me to swallow because I refuse to admit that I'm right and you're wrong. Stoic philosophy as a high funk shows you how to survive it with a healthy, balanced mindset. When you're around a society that is looking for every opportunity to call you nuts, when in actual fact, they're the ones that have the mental health issues. Because at least you're doing the work on yourself. At least you're working to understand yourself. That's why I was saying yesterday in my message, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You have nothing to fear. Because there's an entire philosophy built around the mindset that God is asking you to step into. And so my radio show, I'm going to have 1 hour, the Stoic Hour. I'll read out a passage and then I'll discuss it, and then we'll have discussions, and then I'd like to be able to go down to the Philosopher's Corner every Wednesday, Thursday night or whatever, and just sit in my armchair, because in my at Mama Bear's and at the Alchemist Cavern and the Philosopher's Corner, I'm going to have my own specific chair that no one else is allowed to sit in, and I'd like to have these discussions. Let's talk about philosophy. Let's talk about Stoicism and Buddhism as well. I always say Stoicism is the father of philosophy and Buddhism is the mother of philosophy, because Buddhism is softer, a softer, more gentler approach, but it is built on the back of Greek philosophy. But it's just a more gentler approach. And then, of course, from Stoic philosophy, you have the chivalric code, which is the knight's code of honour, the code that all knights take when they become knighted. And I live and die by the chivalric code. I have knights in my family, Scottish and French. I don't know about English, maybe English, but I know Scottish and French and Irish. Believe it or not, they say, Irish people can't be knighted, but my great-grandfather, Sir Thomas Bracken, he was Irish. He was an Irish poet, and he got knighted for writing the New Zealand national anthem. So, yeah, I'm from a long line of knights in that. And so as a woman, which is why I call myself a knightress, I take this stoic chivalric code very seriously, because I'm honouring the code of my ancestors. And that's what a lot of high funks and that need to understand as well. When you get to the ether stage of your ascension, because there's like 8 stages of ascension, and that's why I'm an 8th elemental alchemist. When you get to the ether stage, which is 6, before you get to the creation stage, which is where you step into your power and work for God, and everything you do is for the higher good of, and it doesn't matter who your God is, but when you go through an ascension, you're going home to God, and whoever God is to you, that could be Odin, it could be the Christian God, it could be anyone. For me, it's all the gods, because I'm from all over the place. And I'm an Indigenous reverend, so I have to be in connection with a lot of these more prominent gods and that, because I went first. I'm the trailblazer. So I need to be able to speak in the language and faith of all of those who come after me, so that I can make sense to them in a world where nothing makes sense. So, the ether stage is when you start getting to know your ancestors. where you start connecting with your deceased loved ones again, where you start healing from the grief. You know how I've just had all that stuff with my Amber? That was me touching the ether stage again, because your ascensions, they go round and round and round. It's never ending. Just because I'm an eighth elemental and I'm all the way up there in birth now, you still have cycles. It's like being put in the washing machine. You know, like you wear a jumper and then you wash it and then you wear it again and then you wash it and then you wear it again and then you wash it. It's just like that. And the ether stage is where you connect with your grief and the people that have died and your ancestors and your bloodlines and your ancestry and, you know, your historical genetic history. So you can have a DNA test and find out that you're 100% Swiss, or that you're 50% Kiwi, 20% Hungarian, 30% English. But your genetic history, the part of your cells that remembers, so like it's just okay. Say for me, I might have a DNA test and find out I'm 100% Kiwi, but I know through genetic memory that my grandmother was Syrian, that her parents were Egyptian, that I have ancestors that were in Greece and Rome and China and Taiwan and Chile and Peru, and they were Mesoamerican, they were Hawaiian, you know, from God, all over the place, Germany, France, because I have a genetic, it's genetically been documented that my ancestors blazed those trails in order to create me, even though my DNA might say I'm 100% Māori, as white as the driven snow that she is. But I have a history in me that is marked through history. I have a genetic history in me that's marked through time that proves I'm also French, German, Scottish, Irish, English. Do you know what I mean? Egyptian, Iranian, blah, blah, blah. Your DNA, when you do a blood test that tells you, you know, where your DNA is from, it means absolutely nothing in comparison to your genetic history. Your 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 genes, the cells in your body remember who your ancestors were, and it will be documented in time. And when you get to the ether stage of your ascension, you're wanting to know where you come from. So you start looking it up and you start finding out things about your ancestors who might not show up in a blood test, that did remarkable things to pave the way for the world that you live in today. And it becomes fascinating and you want to learn more, because the more you learn about where you came from, the more you learn about where they came from, and it starts this whole cycle of rebirth within you that completely transforms how you see yourself. Which is why I ended up going from being meek and mild and keeping my mouth shut and putting up with the abuse to standing up and saying, nah, bro, nah, I'm not going to take that no more, eh? You can't tell me there's something wrong with me because I'm Māori, because my ancestors, man, we fought in the Crusades, eh? My ancestors rode on boats all the way from North America and Hawaii all the way to New Zealand. We created New Zealand. My ancestors came all the way from North Africa, man. And we helped build Greece. And we helped forge Rome. and we created Switzerland and France and Germany. So you can't tell me that what I am is wrong. That sort of thing. I'm going to stand up and draw on my mana. You can't tell me that I'm wrong. I have a history to be proud of, and it helped me survive everything you bastards put me through. That's me speaking. That's how a New Zealand Māori person would speak. That's me. That's me now. That's me now. Whereas before, I took the hits, I took the knocks, I took the punches. Whereas now, after what my ex did, I embrace it. I just brace it. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter what they threaten me with, whether it was my own kids, my husband, my siblings, my whatever. I just close my eyes and I just toughen my body up and I just take it. I just absorb the impact because it makes me stronger. You know, a bone is strongest where it breaks. If you break a leg bone and it heals, where the break heals becomes stronger than the parts that didn't break. And that's what happens when you go through an ascension. And when you find out where you came from through your genetic memory, it makes you unbreakable. And that's why I keep saying to people, get back up. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Give yourself a couple of days to mourn the impact or the loss or whatever, and then get back up. Because the longer you stay down, the weaker you become, and it's important when you in order to survive an ascension, to get back up. I've had presidents and prime ministers and secret service and that from all over the world come at me, hack my phones, try and threaten me with all sorts of shit, and it doesn't matter who they've had turn against me, including people that are my soul, my lifeblood, my own kids. I get back up because I will not go down in defeat. I would rather die standing than live on my knees. And that's how strong you end up, and it's because of things like the Stoics that taught me why I'm in this fight and why it's important to get back up. And that's why I'm out here teaching all the high funks, because we're the ones who have been put here to leave an everlasting mark on history. In 200, 300 years' time, people are going to find my teachings and be like, whoa, she's speaking my language. I'm here to keep the creative minds, the people that were put here to make a difference in the world for centuries to come, like Mozart and Van Gogh and all of that. I'm here to keep them alive, because people like Donald Trump and Keir Starmer and NATO and all that are absolutely determined to kill the cultures that we're creating. You know, they're bombing Iran, they're bombing Palestine, they went after Libya, and all these ancient cultures they're trying to wipe off the face of the earth to replace with their own. And their own culture is, it's all AI and robots who can't think and can't feel and aren't empathic, and they're not creative. And so I'm fighting to keep the traditional world alive. And the only way I can do that is if we all stand up together and say no more. If you know who you are, by knowing where you came from, it tells you exactly where you're meant to be. It shows you the map, it shows you where your path is, and then you find out exactly why you were put here. And then it makes you all the more determined to get back up. So it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what happens in your life. It doesn't matter what's been thrown at you. If you're a high funk, you're being taught a lesson. Find the lesson and you'll receive the reward from it, I promise. And that's why I want to have my radio station have 1 hour every week where we talk about Stoic philosophy, because it's a reminder of why you need to get back up. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Don't let people pity you. You're not here so that people can feel sorry for you. You're here so that people can feel inspired by you and draw strength from you, because you were born to be a leader in your field, whether it's in art, writing, music, photography, whatever. There are going to be people out in this world who look at what you've created and you're going to change their lives forever. And that is the kind of power that is a privilege, not a right. It's an honour to be able to have that kind of power over people's lives, and it's something that you can't take for granted. But in order for you to be able to, receive that privilege, you have to earn the right. So I'm teaching you, get back up. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Stop wallowing in self-pity. Accept the lesson, embrace it. Thank the universe for thinking that you were strong enough and worthy enough to go through the process. Because a lot of people are going to go through this entire life of theirs completely blind and wondering why they were stuck in unhappy lives and unhappy marriages and never got to fulfill their dreams and that. But you're the example of what happens when you break the rules. Because society wants you to stay down. But when you get back up, you're breaking the rules. And we're trailblazers. We were born to break the rules. You just have to be strong enough to fight and stand up against those that are trying to force you to adhere to them. So, yeah, so that's why I'm going to have my radio show where I teach people about Stoic philosophy. I'm just waiting for the day when I can sit around and have these exquisite Indigenous coffees and discuss Stoic philosophy with like-minded individuals, where there's no shouting, no losing tempers, just, God, that's a really interesting way to look at it. What about this? What about this way to look at it? God, I never thought of it like that. Well, I read this book once, that sort of thing. Sip, sip of my beautiful Indigenous coffees. Because all the coffee that I'm going to sell, it's going to be from Indigenous companies. There's Indigenous coffee companies all around the world I didn't even know existed. And of course, exquisite teas. I'm going to put together my own blend of teas. And actually, I've got North Carolina to thank for my introduction to things like chai masala and Darjeeling. I didn't even know those teas existed either until I went to North Carolina. So, yeah, I didn't know Russia produces tea. But now I know. And I want to do, that's why I was saying about going to Tunisia, doing business with Tunisia, because they're like, if not the largest, one of the largest consumers of coffee in the world. What they don't know about coffee isn't worth knowing. So I'm going to send like delegates over and that to do business deals and, yeah, tea and coffee and that because they're medicinal. Don't believe the bullshit that people tell you about, caffeine and this, that, and the other thing. They're medicines for the body, medicines for the soul. That's why we've been drinking them for so long. You look at Chinese people, Indian people, and Arabs, they all live to like a gajillion years old, and it's because they live on a diet of tea and coffee. But it's none of the processed crap that we get in, like, Western countries. I'm going to be doing the proper stuff. Where when you take a sip, it's like, like medicine for the soul. So, yeah, but I've got like a whole thing around that I'm just not going to go into. So, yeah, so I'm just putting it out there about my radio station. They're going to call it Fire Radio or the Fire Station. I've got to go down to the fire station. We're going to do all sorts of competitions. I've already been thinking up, different competitions we can have where people who listen can win prizes because obviously we're going to be like in the very least Switzerland and the surrounding, because we're going to be sort of internet based, but we're going to be a proper radio station, but internet based, because I was trying to figure out how I could have a radio station, because you've got to have all sorts of towers and licensing laws, and it was actually my baby boy that said to me, why don't you just do it on the internet? So I looked it all up and I was like, oh my God. And I'm going to have my own internet. I'm going to be my own internet provider. Going to create my own internet, which I got the idea from Yorkshire. When they did, was it PlusNet? Was it PlusNet was the Yorkshire one? A whole pile of Yorkshire people got together and created their own internet company. Eventually sold their souls to BT, I think. But, yeah, I'm going to do it all myself. So then, we'll have all sorts of competitions. I'm going to invite people on to have their own. I would love to be able to do like on a Sunday evening, like where it's just a couple of hours of classical music, but have somebody come in who knows all about classical music and plays classical music, because we don't need licensing laws for classical music because, it's over like 50 years old. The music we will play will be all artists and performers and that signed up to our talent agency and through our school. So it's a great way to promote their music. People can tune in from all around the world. listening. But you obviously will have to keep the competitions local if we're giving away tickets to concerts or things like that, festivals, that sort of thing. So yeah, I've thought of all sorts of prizes and competitions to have, and yeah, we'll get our presenters out and about, walking around, talking to people on the street in our downtown of Burracom, which is what I call downtown fire, where we have all the shops and stuff, just all sorts of things. So yeah, all because when everybody tried to keep me down, I got back up. And I lead by example, which is why whoever I end up with as my husband, as my life partner, can't be anything less than equal to me. I don't like weak people. I don't like weak men. It's gross because I'm not weak. And men keep thinking that I'm weak. They see my story and they think I'm weak. But I want a man who's proud to stand by my side because he's proud of me. Look what she did. Look what she overcame. Look what she became. That's my woman. I'm worthy of a man who's loud and proud, who doesn't hide in the shadows, who doesn't secretly fancy me but too scared to approach because that means he's weak. If you're too scared to approach me, you're weak. I like a man, even though I'm very feminine now, I like a very strong masculine man who knows what he wants and isn't afraid to go after it. He can be intimidated by me because I'm not someone to mess about with. Like, don't get it twisted. I have the power of the universe in my hand. I can crush you like a bug. If you commit a sin against God or me or the pure and innocent, I'm going to be your worst nightmare. But that's reserved for people who commit sins like Donald Trump and Keir Starmer. If as long as you respect me and you know where you stand with me, I'm nothing to be afraid of. In the same regards that I'm pretty sure I end up with a man who either comes from law enforcement or military or is a leader himself, where he himself would be intimidating to the world around him. I would find him a pussycat because I'll know where I stand with him. I'll know what my boundaries are with him by watching him with the people he leads as well. My equal. Which is why we end up, according to my teacher and God, a power couple. That's what a divine masculine, divine feminine power couple is. Together, we're nobody to be messed with, but we're nobody to be messed with individually as well. But it means that when we come together, nobody's going to try and take advantage of us, and nobody's going to try and take advantage of those children, which is why we become, one half of each gate. And nobody gets in and out without going through him and I first. And if there's no men out there that are capable of those standards, then I'm perfectly happy doing it all on my own. I've gotten this far. Once I get justice and I get the money to get out of here, I'm quite happy to just do it all on my own because I'll have the money and I'll have the people to help me get proper investors in and that, so that we can work together, but it'll still be mine and all mine. Everything I've created up until that point, before I meet a man, is mine and all is mine, all mine, no sharing. Nobody gets an ounce of nothing I've created if they didn't help me get this far, which is why my sister and my nephew, well, my sister and three of my nephews are coming along for the ride, because they stood by me from start to finish. And I only reward the loyal. Well, not that it's a reward, but I show grace to the loyal. Loyalty's everything to me as a Scorpio. I'm ride or die. Ride or die. You're either all in or you're not loyal at all. And because loyalty is a spectrum, you're loyal by being honest, you're loyal by being respectful, you're loyal by being present, by being determined, by if you say you're going to do something, you do it. That's loyalty. You know, committed, faithful. Only have eyes for you. Don't flirt. Like, you know, there's a whole spectrum of loyalty. And when it comes to my personal relationships, I expect a lot from top to bottom, from fidelity to honesty. So if men like that out there don't exist anymore, then so be it. Whatever. So I'm going to go and have my brekkie now. So I'm just putting it out there. Yeah, the fire station. I keep hearing some like it hot. What is it? Some like it hot and some sweat when the heat is on. That was called the power station, eh? So, yeah. Okay, I'm going to go. I shall speak to you later. Ka kite anō. Mwah.